And good afternoon on the East Coast, good morning on the West Coast, and welcome to today's webinar, Get Your Business Ready for Severe Weather, How to Prepare, Respond, and Recover. This webinar is presented in collaboration between the Small Business Administration, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, IBHS, and the Insurance Information Institute, III. My name is Christina Gropp, Public Relations at IBHS, and I will be moderating today's Business Preparedness event. Over the next 75 minutes, you'll be hearing from 4 experts on how to prepare for, respond to, and recover from severe weather and hurricanes. You'll be hearing from Gail Morton, Business Resiliency Manager at IBHS, Alex Contreras, Director of the Office of Preparedness, Communication, and Coordination in SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance, Chris Chiaffi, Commercial Lines Engineer at IBHS, and Loretta Waters, Vice President of Media Relations at III. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and a recording will be emailed to all those who have registered for today's event. All attendees are muted to prevent noise distractions. If you have questions, we invite you to submit them using the questions feature on GoToWebinar, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. As time allows, we will answer questions at the end of today's presentation. Well, we have a lot to cover, so I will hand it off now to our first presenter, Alex Contreras from the Small Business Administration. Alex?
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making time in what I'm sure is very busy right now with all the things that businesses are juggling. But to cover this very important topic about preparedness for businesses, especially with the upcoming forecast that we have for disaster activity this hurricane season. If we could go to the next slide. I'm going to cover a few main topic areas, first starting with preparedness, and then looking at recovery and also mitigation, and how SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance plays a role in helping businesses navigate these areas. Next one. So in disaster assistance, we like to tell businesses and to try and get them prepared and in the right mindset that it's not really a matter of if something's going to happen, but when. And it's not always going to be some type of major, national catastrophic event. Most areas are susceptible or vulnerable to various types of risk. So, you have Gulf Coast states or East Coast states that are vulnerable to hurricanes. We have states vulnerable to tornadoes, states that are at risk of earthquakes, fires. Basically, no matter where you're at around the country, there's some type of natural hazard probably that could threaten your business. And, this map that you're looking at right now, it's not a scientific map. So just, for the folks that are in Michigan, just know that you're not free of municipalities. We know that there are flooding events often that happen in the state, severe winter weather and other types of things also. So all businesses throughout the country definitely have to be prepared. Next slide. So looking at planning, this isn't just for homeowners, but this is for all businesses as well. We look at 4 main areas: establishing a communications plan, looking at protecting your documents and making sure that you have access to them, reviewing insurance coverage for your business and making sure that you're covered as much as possible, because in reality, insurance is the most cost-effective way of recovering from an event, but it requires that you have your critical things covered with some type of policy. And then also making sure that you practice and test your plan. Next slide. So on the topic of communications planning, it's a really critical thing when you're going through the post-disaster recovery strategy. It's important to have a list of important phone numbers and email addresses, not just for things like, media and utility companies and emergency responders, but also for your staff, your vendors, your important customers that you have. Because what you'll want to do is make sure that you keep them updated on the status of your business. So for example, if there's a major flooding event, but your customers or your vendors are from out of state and maybe aren't there on the ground and don't know exactly what the status of your business is. Was it affected? Has it been impacted? Is it closed? Is it not accessible? So you'll want to maintain a clear line of communications. And sometimes that starts with identifying roles and responsibilities for people within your company, making sure you have a spokesperson who's going to be communicating out clearly, and that information isn't being spread out through different channels and they're not all on the same page. And then, with the current situation right now that we've had with the coronavirus, I think there's another group of officials that we recommend you stay in contact with now. Before it was mainly, sign up for alerts with FEMA, sign up for weather alerts, sign up for alerts from your local emergency responders, like the police department or the state emergency management office, because they're going to send you automatic alerts if something is happening in your area. But now you can add to that list public health alerts as well. Protecting vital information, step 2. We used to tell people when we gave these talks, over 10 years ago, that they would want to store their records off-site someplace that wasn't vulnerable to whatever natural disaster might impact them, like a flood or a fire. So that way you'd have some hard copies saved another place. Now we have the benefit of technology, being able to store that information in the cloud and being able to access it very quickly. But this is important to make sure that you have financial records, copies of your insurance declaration pages, making sure you have all of your contacts saved, tax returns from previous years, keeping those saved electronically someplace where you will be able to access them as you are navigating the recovery programs if something does happen. Next slide. So I won't go into too much detail because we are lucky enough to have some subject matter experts on the call with us today from the insurance industry. But we highly recommend to businesses that they look at looking at flood insurance. Just as a rule of thumb, for a home that gets just an inch of water can cause as much as $25,000 in damage. That's just a standard single family home size. Imagine what the damage would be to your business if you have a much larger footprint and much more expensive machinery and equipment and furniture and fixtures and inventory and everything else that's typically stored within a business. Most insurance policies don't cover flood insurance. You have to have a separate type of policy for that. And so that's why we recommend businesses go to floodsmart.gov to look at that. But it is usually one of the most costly types of disasters that SBA responds to, is because there's such a big gap of property owners who don't have coverage for that type of loss. And so we end up seeing us do a lot more in disaster loan assistance for businesses following some type of a flood event. Next slide. Reviewing your insurance options. So not just looking at what coverage you might need, but making sure you review them annually to make sure that you're keeping up with the growth size of your business. A lot of businesses and even homeowners are guilty of this, is that you get the policy when you originally buy the property or when you originally start the business, and then as you grow over time, you don't quite keep up with increasing the policy to stay, to keep up with the amount of property or contents or things that you have now. And so now you begin to see that you're underinsured. And so we want to make sure that people stay up to date, that they review their documents, they keep updated copies of them, and then also regularly photograph or videotape the contents of your home or business. And this is very easy. It's as simple as walking through your business with your camera on video record, and you can narrate over it and say, this is, the warehouse, or this is the retail storefront, and this is the machinery and equipment that we have. This is, when we purchased it, how much it was. And all of these things are very valuable when it comes time to apply for different assistance programs, because they help refresh your memory of the things that you might have had that you lost when you're applying for assistance. So some very good resources that we suggest you look at. Ready.gov is a great resource. It has checklists for not just homeowners, but also for businesses for different types of hazards. And then also the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety has also some great preparedness checklists, and they're going to talk more about that when we get to their portion of the webinar. So the last part is, and we always stress this to businesses, is testing your plan, making sure that you don't just create the plan, and then put it on a shelf and let it gather dust there. You need to exercise that plan on a regular basis, maybe annually, or maybe in coordination with some type of preparedness campaigns that are happening. For example, the start of hurricane season, like we're doing right now, trying to remind businesses out there that we are entering into the hurricane season, and that it's important to think about these things and start to exercise the existing plans that you have. What you want to do is to create a culture of preparedness within your business and make sure that people understand and know what their roles are if something does happen, and that it becomes more of a muscle memory of something, if they do have to respond to a disaster, rather than, being overwhelmed just by the sheer magnitude of the event and then having to try and educate themselves and learn these things on the fly. It's much easier if, the initial steps they're familiar with, and will help ensure that they have a more successful recovery for your business. So going on to the next part about recovery, I'm going to talk about SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance and the different programs that we offer to help businesses recover. So SBA offers disaster loans. We're really the primary source of federal assistance to help private property owners with disaster losses that are not covered by insurance or other recoveries. SBA offers low interest federal loans to businesses of all sizes, private nonprofit organizations, as well as homeowners and renters. So this is a direct loan program from the federal government. This isn't a loan that SBA offers through another bank where we guarantee the loan. These are direct federal loans. So just to give you an idea of some of the largest events that we've responded to. Now these are just natural disasters, and as I was mentioning before, flooding events tend to be the most significant events that we find ourselves responding to. Largest event so far is just under $11 billion was for Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Wilma in 2005. Next largest in 2017, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. After that, there was the Northridge earthquake in 1994. That was in Northridge, California. And then we have Hurricane Sandy at just over $2.5 billion. So, I mean, if you look at these, you see a common theme here, like I was mentioning. Most of these are large hurricanes or flooding events. Now, I should note that, historically, these were the largest events that SBA had responded to. Currently, right now, we're responding to the coronavirus and providing economic injury disaster loans and other types of relief loans. But we're providing, direct disaster loans to businesses and nonprofits for coronavirus. That assistance right now just totally eclipses what we've done in the past on natural disasters. We're already over $86 billion to small businesses and nonprofits for the coronavirus, and that's just since the start from about mid-March is when we started declaring those disasters and providing assistance. So in SBA's history, we've provided about $67 billion in total since the agency was started in 1953 for all disasters. And so this has been a very large event, the coronavirus, and responding to that. And we're just really, I would say we have a lot more assistance to provide before it's all said and done. So a lot more to come on that front. Next, I'm going to go over a little bit more detail about how we declare disasters and the different types of declarations. And I'm going to try and go through a little bit quicker so we make sure we have enough time for the other speakers. But if we could go to the next slide. So the main type of disaster declaration, this is the same that for all those past ones I just showed, is a presidential disaster declaration for individual assistance. That's when there's a major event. The governor requests that FEMA comes in, does a damage assessment. SBA does an assessment along with them, and governor can request a major disaster declaration, major presidential disaster declaration. Next slide. There's two types of major presidentials. There's an individual assistance, which is where we're providing SBA physical disaster loans to businesses, nonprofits, homeowners, and renters. And then on a public assistance side, where FEMA and the president might declare this, SBA would provide only disaster loans to nonprofits that provide essential services of a governmental nature. However, in most cases, most events, we see if there's an individual assistance, we're probably going to see some overlap with the public assistance declaration and vice versa. Next slide. So SBA also has its own declaration making authority, and this begins with the governor making a request to the SBA administrator, who is Jovita Carranza. In an agency declaration, we just need to have 25 or more homes or businesses with at least 40% of uninsured property loss for a declared county. If a county or jurisdiction has at least 25 homes or businesses, and it can be any combination, that county or jurisdiction can qualify for the declaration, and then the governor sends a request to SBA and we can declare it. For these types of disaster SBA declarations, you can look at them in two different categories. We have the presidential declarations that we respond to. We have the agency declarations. Both of those we provide physical damage loans and economic injury. And then we have various types of economic injury only declarations. Governor's certification, for example, is the kind that right now we're using to respond to the coronavirus. Next slide. SBA's disaster loans are available for physical damages to more than just small businesses. We provide assistance to homeowners, renters, nonprofits, and for businesses of all sizes as well. Our economic injury disaster loans, however, are for working capital and are only available to small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, and most nonprofit organizations. Next slide. So going into a little bit of the loan limits. Businesses can borrow up to a maximum of $2 million for either physical damages or economic injury or working capital. Homeowners can borrow up to a maximum of $200,000 to repair or replace primary residence. They can also borrow up to a maximum of $40,000 for personal property. And then SBA can also provide up to 20% of the total physical losses for mitigation. So that property owner can increase their loan in order to do protective measures to prevent damage from the next event. So when we approve a loan, we look at three different areas: eligibility, credit history, and repayment. And borrowers must obtain hazard insurance on all secured loans. And then also, if the property is located in a special flood hazard area or the damage was caused by flood, SBA is going to require them to carry flood insurance as well. again, the loans can only be used for uncompensated losses. So it's whatever the losses were, not including what they received from insurance or other recoveries. And they had to have complied with previous SBA loan agreements or some other federal obligations. Next slide. As I was mentioning before, it's a direct federal disaster loan, so the interest rates are low and the terms are long, so they go out as far as 15 or 30 years in order to help keep the payments low. And then also, in some cases, we can refinance previous mortgages. Currently, the interest rates for home loans is 1.25% if they don't have credit available elsewhere. And for businesses, the interest rates are 3%. And for nonprofits, the interest rates are 2.75%. Next slide. As I mentioned before, in some cases, we can refinance the existing debt. I won't go into this in a lot of detail, again, so we have more time for the other speakers, but I just want to bring this up because it's important for, if you do go through a disaster and you have existing debt, that you don't exclude yourself from applying because you think that you won't be able to afford both. In some cases, we can refinance it at a lower rate in order to make that previous balance and what you need in order to rebuild or repair something that you can afford. Collateral requirements. So physical damage loans over $25,000 do require collateral. Same with economic injury loans or working capital loans in amounts over $25,000 also require collateral. And then the last part I'm going to talk about is mitigation. So we strongly encourage businesses to look at this. This is one of the features of our programs that not a lot of disaster survivors and recovering businesses take advantage of. But disaster mitigation reduces loss of life, property, lessens the impact of disasters. The number of disasters each year increases, but really only 50% of the events even ever trigger some type of federal declaration. So if you're doing mitigation at this time, when you get a loan, you're helping to prevent losses in the future, which, there's no guarantee that another declaration and other federal assistance is going to be able to help you because it may not get declared. So that's why mitigation and having insurance is really the best options, most cost-effective options. Next slide. So look at things like flood mitigation, wildfire mitigation, wind, earthquake. All of these things are just some examples of ways that you can use the SBA disaster loan to help finance these protective measures. Next slide. So also on the call today, we have the Institute for Business and Home Safety, who are going to talk about some different programs, but we strongly encourage our borrowers to look at the Fortified Home and Fortified Commercial programs when they're looking at ways that they can mitigate their properties against future losses. 3 steps for applying for an SBA disaster loan. Just want to make sure we get this clear. The most effective ways to apply online, that's more important now than ever because of the social distancing and things that we're doing. There's very few disaster recovery centers that we're opening right now for events, but applying online through your computer, laptop, tablet, phone is definitely an easy way. If it's a major presidential declaration, you should go to FEMA first, and then they will refer you to the SBA disaster loan. Generally, the application period is open for 60 days for physical losses, and then open for 9 months for the economic injury or the working capital. Next slide. Once we get an application, an SBA has its own loss verifiers, and they'll contact the applicants to do a damage assessment. Usually they do it over the phone. We talk about what the types of damage you had, talk about the property, and we'll come up with an estimate. And that's the starting point for the application. In general, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to process the application. And then if it's approved, we go to closing. We make an initial disbursement within 5 days. That initial disbursement is usually $25,000 for physical damages and $25,000 for economic injury. And then after that, once they submit some receipts and other things, we can make the remaining disbursements. And so now at this time, I'd like to pass it over to Loretta. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Some great information. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to participate in this important webinar. The Insurance Information Institute has been around for 60 years now. We are the trusted source of unique data-driven insights on insurance to inform and empower consumers. For more than 60 years, we've helped people make educated and essential decisions. Unlike other sources, our sole focus is disseminating information. We neither lobby nor sell insurance. Experts are predicting an above normal 2020 Atlantic hurricane season, which began on June 1st and runs until November 30th. This is the 5th year in a row with an above average season. Tropical Storm Arthur, which brushed eastern North Carolina May 18th, marked the 6th straight year a named storm came in May or earlier. And just 9 days later, Tropical Storm Bertha spun off the South Carolina coast before quickly making landfall northeast of Charleston. We also had Tropical Storm Cristobal, which hit the Gulf Coast just this past week, and we're concerned about the flooding that will be coming about in the next few days. And flood watches and warnings are stretching for thousands of miles from the Gulf Coast all the way up to Wisconsin, which, by the way, I think this is the first time ever that they will be looking at flooding there. So we really want to include that fact to you. And more than 15 million residents, many of them are business owners. So, let's face it, the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. economic downturn, the riots, it's all, has had complications this year for the hurricane season. And that's overwhelmed businesses and communities. So how do businesses become more resilient to withstand severe weather, and particularly this above normal hurricane season? One way is through having the right type and amount of insurance. Whether you're a startup or an established company, every business should have it and review their risk management plan, make sure their insurance is adequate. Next slide. The first step is to take a business inventory, making sure to list all business equipment, supplies, merchandise, and commercial vehicles in case you have to make a claim. Taking an inventory of your business property is essential. It ensures you don't, previous slide, please. Taking an inventory of your business property is essential. It ensures you don't accidentally leave yourself uninsured by forgetting to account for key assets. The claims process goes as smoothly and quickly as possible. And you keep track of your business's physical investments. Next slide, please. So what are the coverages you need? Property insurance for one. Property insurance can help protect the property your business owns, leases, or rents, including things like buildings, equipment, inventory, furniture, and fixtures. It also provides coverage for loss of accounts receivable and valuable paper records. A business may have the option to insure its business property at either replacement value or what's called actual cash value. And the difference is that replacement value coverage can help you replace your property at market prices, whereas actual cash value takes depreciation into account. Replacement value coverage costs more, but it also pays out more in the event of a claim, so it's really something you should consider. Next slide. Loss of income. Most people would never consider opening a business without first purchasing property insurance, especially if they have a mortgage and it's required by their mortgage lender. But too many business owners fail to think about how they would keep their business afloat if they were forced to temporarily close. Business interruption coverage, it's also known as business income coverage, covers the loss of income that a business suffers after a disaster or due to the rebuilding process after a disaster. Business interruption insurance can help with operating expenses during the period of restoration. They typically include lost net income that's based on your financial records, mortgage, rent, or lease payments, loan payments, and any taxes or employee payroll. Make sure the policy limits are sufficient to cover your company for more than a few weeks. Typically, recovery from hurricanes and other disasters can take 6 months or more for a business to get back to business. Business interruption insurance is often included in a business policy known as a BOP. You may have heard of that before. It can also be included as a standalone or rider to a commercial policy. Business interruption coverage perils typically include theft, vandalism, fire, wind, hail, lightning, even damage from vehicles or aircraft. So it's important to include that, and mechanical breakdown is another one. So keep in mind a BOP is limited in scope, so you want to check with your insurance professional to ensure you have adequate coverage. Some BOPs are tailored to the individual needs of a business. For example, business coverage doesn't always include flood or earthquake. Those are usually under separate policies. Undocumented income that's not listed on your business financial records. Utilities, pandemic viruses or communicable diseases. Also, business interruption is likely to have a restoration period. This is the length of time that a policy will help pay for lost income and extra expenses while the business is being restored. And typically there's a 48 to 72-hour waiting period before the period of restoration kicks in, which typically lasts for 30 days, but this period can be extended to 360 days by endorsement. How much of business interruption you need depends on several factors. A good rule of thumb is to use your business's gross earnings and projections to estimate future profits and determine the right amount of coverage. Remember, if business interruption costs exceed the coverage limit chosen, you'll have to pay out of pocket for those extra expenses. So we want to keep that in mind. So how much does a business interruption cost? It really depends on a number of factors, including your industry, the number of employees, the amount of coverage, your deductible, and that can be either a dollar deductible or a time deductible. Also, prior claims experience, so if you've had to file any claims with your insurer. This also depends on the frequency and severity of those losses. So if you've had a number of claims losses over the course of the past year or two, that would be a factor, or if you've had a really severe claims loss. The price of the policy also can vary depending on your location. For example, if your business is in an area with a higher risk of hurricanes or wildfires, the cost of business interruption insurance may increase. For example, a restaurant might have higher premiums than a real estate agency because of the greater risk of fire. Also, a real estate agency can more easily operate out of another location. So let's look at some of the options and endorsements to business interruption coverage. One coverage you may need is called contingent business interruption insurance, also referred to as dependent properties. And contingent business interruption insurance provides insurance coverage in the event the damage or destruction is of non-owned property reduces or terminates your business's earnings. And there are 4 types of entities that qualify as eligible dependent properties. One is suppliers, and those are contributing locations that supply parts, materials, or services to you, the business owner, and necessary to manufacture your product or provide its service. Then there are the buyers, and that's someone who buys or accepts your products, goods, or services. And this may be your sole buyer or one that buys a majority of your output. Then there are providers, also known as manufacturing location. And a manufacturing location manufactures products for delivery to your customers under a contract of sale. And then finally, drivers, also known as a leader location. These can include anchor stores like Sears or Target or Macy's, sports and entertainment venues, and other such entities that draw customers to the area. So if people aren't coming to these anchor stores, they might not come to your business. Extra expense insurance. Business interruption can include that, which will cover anything beyond the normal day-to-day operating expenses that are necessary to keep your business solvent. Instances of extra expenses include renting a temporary place of business while your business is being restored, replacement of hardware, technology, and furniture, paying overtime for employees or even hiring more employees, leasing equipment. Extra expense insurance can be bundled in a business owner's policy. It can also be as a separate insurance policy or as a rider to commercial property. While insurance policies vary, typically there is business interruption coverage for what's called civil authority, such as curfews, when a business has to reduce hours or when a business is unable to access its property due to a government order requiring the business to close. Such coverage nearly always requires the existence of property damage within some limited geographic radius surrounding the policyholder's location. So depending on the policy, this can range anywhere from 1 to 10 miles and has a waiting period of 24 to 72 hours before a policyholder can begin claiming the benefits of coverage. Coverage typically lasts up to 4 weeks, but the time period can be extended by paying an additional premium. However, once a curfew is lifted and the business can resume, that's when the coverage will cease. Utility services endorsement extends business interruption and/or expense coverage to apply to a suspension of operations caused by a disruption of basic utility services to a business's premises. So that's anything like gas or electric or water, anything provided by public or private utility companies. Many business owners that were impacted by Hurricane Sandy didn't purchase this coverage, which left them in really a financially difficult situation. And there are 2 specific endorsements that should be considered. One is called time element. That means in the event winds break down a power line or a water main is broken, this coverage can cover losses including loss of income and expenses up to a predetermined time limit or until the power or water service is restored, depending on your policy. Then there's direct damage, and this endorsement is an extension of property insurance providing protection against damage to a business owner's property resulting from an interruption of any of the utility services named in the policy as a result of a covered loss, such as a windstorm. Other coverages to consider, additional property coverage. It provides for items such as fences, signage, or awnings at the insured location. Since these items are particularly vulnerable to high wind, this is an important coverage to have during hurricane season. Another one is ordinance or law, which provides coverage to rebuild or repair the building in compliance with the most recent local building codes. Building codes often change, so you really want to have coverage to rebuild your property to code. And then finally, flood insurance, which is usually not covered under a standard business owner's policy. Make sure to purchase flood insurance both for the structure if you own the building as well as the contents. Flood insurance can be purchased through the federal government's National Flood Insurance Program as well as through some private insurance company. Be aware NFIP limits are $500,000 on the structure and $500,000 on the contents. So you may need to seek private insurance as a second layer of protection if the value of your building or the contents exceeds that amount. And keep in mind there's a 30-day waiting period before being able to purchase flood insurance. And as you can see from all the flooding going on from Cristobal, it can happen unexpectedly and anywhere. And I can't emphasize this enough. I spent a considerable amount of time in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina, and so many of the businesses there didn't have flood insurance. While business insurance can help a business survive a disaster, there are limitations and exceptions to this type of coverage. If you obtain business interruption coverage as part of a commercial property policy, the coverage will only extend to events delineated in the core coverage. So what does that mean? It means if the property insurance does not cover flood damage, you cannot receive business interruption insurance if the company is displaced because of a flood. Know your risks. By your very nature, you are risk takers, right? And that's a good thing. After all, that's how many of you have become successful in your businesses. You've worked long, hard hours. Your business has been doing well. You've been proud of your accomplishments. But smart business owners need to recognize that business insurance is an essential element of an overall business plan. It should be factored in just as you do with fixed operational expenses, such as utilities. So you need electricity, you need gas, you need phones, you need sewer services, you need insurance. Without adequate coverage, you may have to pay out of pocket for costly damages from a riot, hurricane, or other disaster, which could spell financial ruin. You know, and the point I want to make, too, is disasters aren't always natural. They can be man-made. I remember visiting the offices of one business just opposite the World Trade Center. All the windows of the building were blown out and all the computers were melted to their desks. And the owner had just come up to retrieve information from his computer and was horrified to see all of his information gone. And he couldn't retrieve it. Most businesses have changed the way they do business, and now many have all their information on a server away from their business location, or they have the info on Dropbox. But this scenario is a reminder that disasters come in many forms. We've seen this in recent weeks with the riots. You know, often larger businesses will have risk managers to make them determine the right amount of insurance for them. Smaller business owners have to be their own risk managers, and the best way to know your risks is to consult with your insurance professional who can help you make the right decisions. If participants want more information on business insurance or other types of insurance, you can access the III website at III.org, www.III.org. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I'd like to turn this over now to IBH's Gail Morton. Gail?
Thanks, Loretta. Appreciate it. So first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about IBHS. We are an independent, nonprofit scientific research and communication organization. We are supported solely by property insurers and reinsurers. IBHS's building safety research leads to real-world solutions for both home and business owners by building stronger, more disaster-resistant buildings, developing business continuity and recovery programs, and making individuals, businesses, and communities more resilient in the event of loss. Severe weather disrupts lives, displaces families, and drives financial loss. IBHS delivers top-tier science and translates it into action so we can prevent avoidable suffering, strengthen our homes and businesses, inform the insurance industry, and support thriving communities. So in 2010, IBHS created a unique state-of-the-art research center in Richburg, South Carolina. We're the only lab in the world that can fully engulf full-sized 1- and 2-story structures to a variety of natural hazards. The heart of the research center is the fan array, with 105 fans. Each one is equipped with 350 horsepower motors and has a diameter of nearly 6 feet. These fans are similar to those used in mining industry to provide ventilation for large underground shafts. So with these fans, we're able to create realistic Category 1, 2, and 3 hurricanes, extratropical windstorms, wind-driven rain conditions, and even strong thunderstorm frontal winds. The floor plan is 21,000 square feet, which is equivalent to about 4.5 basketball courts, or enough to accommodate 9 2,300 square foot homes. We also have a 55-foot diameter turntable so that we can move building specimens 360 degrees during testing without any human intervention. So in addition to our scientific research, IBHS also provides business continuity and preparedness programs for businesses because natural disasters can wreak havoc on small businesses. So after Superstorm Sandy, the Small Business Majority and American Sustainable Business Council conducted a survey, and they found these 3 things. The majority of small businesses operate out of a single physical location. This makes small businesses more vulnerable to loss compared to larger organizations, which have backup resources at alternate facilities. So as a result, small businesses are more heavily impacted. They also found that the average cost of downtime for small businesses affected by an extreme weather event was $3,000 per day. And just remember, this was back in 2012. And then finally, they found that 50% of small businesses had no disaster recovery plan at all. And then for those businesses that did have plans, 90% of them spent less than 1 day a month preparing and maintaining them. IBHS's statistics show that of businesses that close due to a disaster, at least 25% or 1 in 4 never reopens. And the thing is, the statistics are probably actually higher, since most surveys just cover the first 2 years after a disaster. And some businesses that do hang on only last 2 to 5 years before they finally give up. So this slide here used to be one of my more popular slides, excuses for not having a plan. However, I think it's safe to say that this global pandemic has affected almost every single business in some way or another. But previously, business owners did tend to think that the bad stuff always happened to the other guy. Unfortunately, what we have all experienced, we are all the other guy. With IBHS's OFB-EZ program, it can be simple to take action and create a plan. So IBHS created OFB-EZ. It's a free, streamlined tool designed to help even the smallest businesses focus on planning for any type of business disruption so that they can quickly reopen and resume operations following a disaster. OFB-EZ is an easy-to-use tool that does not require any previous experience with or knowledge of business continuity planning. The toolkit and fillable forms are available in both PDF and Word formats, and they can be downloaded from the IBHS website at disastersafety.org. And then in addition, the toolkit is also available in Spanish. OFB-EZ is also available as a mobile app, which was created in partnership with one of our member companies, EMC Insurance. The app allows businesses to complete and store your plan on your smartphones, tablets, and PCs. And the information that you enter into your plan is stored only on your device, unless you decide to share it with others. And when you do decide to share it, the data is encrypted and locked with the password that you create during the sharing process. And then for those of you who prefer using a full keyboard, you can download the Windows app to create your plan on either a laptop or desktop computer. So the first section of OFB-EZ is Know Your Risk. A risk is any event or situation which could cause financial or operational impact to your business. Risk should be measured in probability. That's what is the likelihood that the risk will occur and how often. And then in severity, what is the amount of damage the risk is capable of causing your business. A good place to start is your county's hazard analysis or mitigation plan. The county plan will include both historical threats, so those are past threats and disasters in your area, and then geographical threats, hazards related to your proximity to floodplains, major airports, dams, ports, and such. And then you also need to consider hazards related to your own business, your internal threats. Those are the threats that stem from the nature of your own business or from specific situations that may originate inside your organization. So those can be such things as illness, death, theft, fraud, immoral, employee morale, the type of equipment that you use, any of your IT risks, and your building. And then there are external threats. These are threats that are beyond your control, but you should be aware of, such as a civil disturbance at a nearby business or government building, nearby construction, or even special events like a large sporting event or concert. So now that you've documented your risks, the next step is to think about your various departments and what activities your employees perform. So as a starting point, you may want to have each of your employees document their daily activities, and they can do this for about a week or so. They should think about and document activities performed on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, annual, special times of the year, and even occasional or an as-needed basis. This will help you to complete the next step of OFB-EZ, which is to identify and document your critical business functions. So which functions are most important? Well, definitely it's going to be those functions that are legal, contractual, regulatory, or financial obligations. And then those other functions that will need to be recovered, for instance, within the first 24 hours, first couple of days, or maybe even the first week after disruption occurs. So once you determine which functions are most important, for each one you should document who performs and helps perform this activity. What technology is needed to complete it? This would include hardware, software, any web tools or websites. And then what about other dependencies? This could be vital records, a type of utility you need, a type of special equipment, maybe another department or staff member. And then you also have to think about third-party supplier. And then how is this activity performed, and are there any manual workaround methods if a certain dependency is not available? And can it be performed at a different location? And then who receives this final product or service? So a business owner's most valuable asset are your employees. Therefore, it's critical for you to know how to contact them after a disaster. You'll want to be able to make sure that they're safe, to let them know the status of your business operations, and then how and when they can get back to work. But this can only be accomplished if you've collected, maintained, and have access to current contact info for all your employees. So suppose a disruption prevents you from accessing your place of business. Would you know the best methods of reaching your staff? Do you have current home and cell phone numbers and email addresses or even emergency contact info? And then when was the last time that you verified this information with your employees? And is your employees' contact information available to you outside of your business location? So the next section is know your equipment. Often businesses have particular equipment that serves as the primary source of a successful operation. If such equipment failed or was unavailable, the business may have to restrict production of goods or services, or may be forced to close or even shut down. So you should identify the key equipment and machinery necessary to perform your critical business functions. Knowledge of equipment exposures and the impact on your business operations is critical to properly manage the exposure. So the next section of OFB-EZ is know your key customers, contacts, suppliers, and vendors. So the same logic that applies to knowing your employees' information also applies here. Your accounting department should be providing the planner with contact info to all your suppliers and vendors, as well as any ongoing changes. Products and services supplied by a third party is critical. It may be difficult or impossible to run your business without them. Therefore, strengthening your supply chain and knowing how to contact them is important to your business. So the next section is know your information technology and vital records. Here you want to create records for each piece of hardware, software, and vital record that was uncovered when you completed your Know Your Operations section. You should plan for how these items will be made recoverable and available to your staff in times of disruption. So the Know Your Finances section is more of a checklist of financial items to consider before disruption or disaster strikes. You want to document things like who can activate or has access to your business's line of credit. Is there emergency cash on hand and who has access to it? How will you process accounts payable and receivable? And then do you have a payroll policy when your business is forced to close due to disruption? And are your employees aware of this policy? So the next section is know when to update and test your plan. So once your plan's been developed, you may think you can check it off your to-do list. However, if your plan is going to be successfully deployed when the need arises, it must be reviewed and updated annually. A business is constantly changing, new products, new services, upgrades to technology, staff coming and going and changing responsibilities, and adding new priorities. All of these changes affect your business, therefore they're going to affect your plan. So if your plan doesn't keep up with your changes, then your plan can't and won't be effective when it's most needed. So when you do review your plan, which should be annually, the toolkit offers some key things to consider. Has your business's risks or hazards changed? Has your business added any new department, product, or service? Has your priority levels of your business functions changed? Have your suppliers or vendors or stakeholders changed? What about any staffing changes? And then have staff responsibilities changed? These types of questions will make the updating of your plan successful. And then, of course, know when to test your plan. Without testing your plan with your staff, you'll never know if your plan will work when needed. So in the toolkit, we have provided a power outage disruption exercise to conduct with your staff. You should gather your employees to discuss the actions and questions provided. This can be done informally, such as during a working lunch or as a part of a staff meeting. And then the final section of OFB-EZ is know where to go for help. So your relationship with your community and outside agencies can strengthen your ability to protect your employees and your property and help you return to normal operations. So in this final section, we have provided a list of organizations that are able to provide beneficial resources to help you prepare for and recover from natural or other types of disasters. So that concludes my portion. I'd like to hand it off to Chris.
Thank you, Gail. So now that we know a little bit more about our toolkit, OFB-EZ, and how to maintain business operations, I want to discuss how you can plan, navigate, and then recover from a natural disaster. As Gail mentioned earlier, 1 out of 4 small businesses will not reopen its doors after an event. So the main question I want to focus on right now is, what can we do to make sure our business is prepared, equipped to handle a natural disaster, especially a hurricane? So a few words come to mind. 1, we want to understand. 2, we want to plan. 3, prepare. And 4, act. First, we need to understand what severe weather events our business is exposed to. For example, are you in the Northeast where heavy snowfall can occur during the winter? Or are you located in Florida where hurricane season runs from June 1st to the end of November? Every region of the country is at risk for some type of severe weather during one point of the year. Knowing a general time frame of when they occur will allow business to organize actions, prepare, and then quickly recover from them. A big part of understanding your business exposure is to look at previous year's storms. What has your business been exposed to in the past? Is it hurricanes? How about high winds? Maybe even hail? Understanding which events is just the beginning, and I can't stress that enough. We want to think about their severity and frequency. Another key component is your location. Does this make you more vulnerable to hazards such as flooding? Are you located on the Gulf or a river? How about landslides? Identifying all these contributing factors is an important aspect of disaster planning. Free online tools such as the FEMA Flood Map Service Center can help you determine your exposure. The second and most important keyword I mentioned earlier is to plan. Developing a plan for severe weather is essential and our initial line of defense against severe weather. Our second toolkit, Easy Prep, helps businesses prepare their property and staff in advance of events such as hurricanes and winter storms. What it does is it outlines the necessary actions and tasks a business should take in chronological order, ultimately creating an emergency preparedness plan which helps you prepare, navigate, and then recover from that event. Diving in just a little bit deeper, there are 8 components that make up your emergency preparedness plan. This includes life safety, sunny day prep, or what I like to call as business maintenance, preparation for the event, which is the hours leading up to it, the actual event itself, and then recovery. Additionally, a post-event debrief is important to understand what went well and what you need to improve on. So each of these 8 components are broken down into easy customizable Excel templates. What this does is it allows your business to add or subtract tasks, which may be specific to your business, your property, or your specific staff. As I mentioned earlier, having an emergency preparedness plan is essential and smart. Now combine that with the business continuity plan, as Gail spoke about earlier, and now we're in business, no pun intended. Having a business continuity plan in place will save you time and will permit your team to focus their energy during an emergency situation. Businesses who offer OFB-EZ and Easy Prep can make their communities more resilient and also protect their employees while maintaining their business bottom line. So now that we understand why we should have an emergency preparedness plan, let's run through an example of a hurricane. We'll begin with sunny day preparation. This is the off season or time frame in between events. For hurricane, we're talking December to May. There are 3 main aspects of sunny day preparation, which include organizational planning, business maintenance, and building component enhancements. During the off season, there's no better time to create a plan and designate key staff to help implement that plan. Some responsibilities of these key staff include a person to monitor local weather advisories, as well as NOAA Hurricane Center. This individual must monitor the track of the storm and be prepared to implement the emergency preparedness plan. Appoint and train your response team to handle life safety issues, business closure, and evacuation measures. Finally, you want to verify all employee contact information and make sure that it's correct. As Gail said before, it's for obvious reasons, you need to get a hold of them and make sure that their information is correct to do so. The second aspect of sunny day preparation is building maintenance. A routinely maintenance plan consisting of several inspections throughout the year can greatly reduce your overall damage you'll see during an event. I recommend you conduct routinely maintenance at all season changes and after any major storm. Prior to conducting maintenance, I have to make sure that you ensure conditions are safe and wear fall protection and also personal protective equipment. What you want to do is remove all debris from around your site and your roof. Debris can become projectiles during high wind events, damaging your property and surrounding businesses. Additionally, you want to clean out your roof drains of all dirt and leaves to ensure that water can properly be removed from your roof and direct it away from your building. You don't want any standing water next to your foundation. Inspect any of the equipment on your roof. Make sure they're tightly secured to the structure. You also want to look for roof cover damage, such as punctures, holes, or maybe even some ponding water. If you see any of those warning signs, hire a licensed contractor to come out to the site to see if they can do anything to fix the issue. The third aspect of sunny day preparation is building component enhancements. This could be some big ticket items you may want to consider in the off season to help equip your building with the tools to resist the elements of a hurricane. IBHS has developed the FORTIFIED programs, which is a set of building resilience standards to help strengthen the components of your building. Whether you're designing a new construction building or re-roofing an existing property, the FORTIFIED standards can help ensure your facility is more disaster resilient. The standards are fundamentally based on our research center testing. They go beyond the basic building codes and focus on different building systems. There are 3 different levels of FORTIFIED commercial: roof, FORTIFIED silver, and FORTIFIED gold. FORTIFIED roof focuses on your roof cover and all the equipment above. The main aspect of it is we want to keep your roof on and the water out. Silver focuses on strengthening the building envelope, which is your walls, your doors, and other openings. And then finally, our top level, which is gold, focuses on strengthening the structural systems and providing backup power to maintain business operations. For more information, you can go to fortifiedcommercial.org. So now let's move on to 5 days before the storm. So during the off-season sunny day prep, we developed and practiced our plan. Now is the time to initiate it. What you want to do is start to secure items around your business as necessary, such as outdoor inventory or signs. You're still going to want to maintain business operations, so don't let this stop your productivity. Inspect for loose debris, which can become projectiles, as I said earlier, and also clogged drains, which could lead to interior water damage. At this time, you want to notify your employees that landfall has potential of a hurricane and that you may need to implement your full emergency preparedness plan. Verify that all employees know how to check the status of your business, whether that's through your internet or phone line, or maybe even contacting a supervisor. Moving on to 72 hours. With just about 3 days left, we need to kick things into high gear. Quickly re-inspect your roof and surrounding property. Once again, you want to secure all your loose inventory, store trash cans, secure signs, and remove that final debris or trash. Check your perimeter drains to ensure they're not blocked. And then you want to review your messages and templates for your website, your telephones, and your other communication tools. Be ready to send those messages out to your customers. Finally, instruct employees to check the company platforms, take their computers home, and always have a fully charged cell phone. Now that it's 24 to 48 hours left and the storm is approaching quickly, we want to make the final decision on when to close. One thing we need to be aware of is leaving enough time for our employees to go home and prepare their own homes and families as well. You want to notify your key customers of your closure and conduct the final facility preparation. At this time, you're going to want to deploy all temporary and permanent shutters and disconnect all electrical equipment. Finally, close and lock those doors. During a storm, you're going to want to monitor your alarm systems. You want to make sure that all employees are set designated times to keep in touch with their general staff. And you want to update all your emergency hotlines, such as your internet, website, and social media, to keep everyone informed. Right after the storm, it's now passed and it's time for recovery. Have an authorized employee return to the facility to assess initial conditions. Document the damage and notify the owners of any issues. When noted that the facility is safe, you can begin to bring your initial startup. At this time, bring back some key employees. Have them evaluate their workstations and document any damage to their supervisors. Report this damage to your insurance company. The final key element to recovery is to let your customers, suppliers, and partners know of your open status and resume normal operations. Another piece of easy prep that you can utilize is our supply checklist. It lets you and your team decide the necessary items needed before the storm, during, and for recovery. Items such as tarps to cover your computers, sandbags for flood mitigation, and gasoline for a potential portable backup generator. It also helps you understand how much of that you will need and when the items were last inspected. I suggest you check these during your sunny day building maintenance. 3 times a year, give or take, once before hurricane season and after. Now, I bet you're all wondering, what happens if a hurricane hits and my business is still temporarily shut due to COVID-19? My first word of advice, and it's not easy, but don't panic. We use EZ Prep to develop an emergency preparedness plan for hurricanes. Now let's see how that is affected by COVID. What can we do differently, and how can we adapt our procedures to fit the situation at hand? Well, the biggest difference we might see in our hurricane plan is that the facility has been temporarily shut down, and our employees may be working from home still. We're going to want to identify key employees and their backups to prepare the building for that hurricane. They're going to have to safely return to the facility to conduct the final preparation part of your plan. If the plan requires more than one person, for example, deploying shutters, social distancing and other personal protective equipment may be required. I would refer to the CDC for more guidelines on these practices. One thing you may need to note is that hiring a contractor during this time may be difficult than usual. The sunny day preparation that we did during the year should have caught any major issues. And as always, keep in contact with your employees, your customers, and your vendors. Let them know your status before, during, and after a storm. Similar to your hurricane plan, have your key employees return to the facility to assess their conditions following the storm. Once again, noting personal protection and social distancing as per CDC. Now, finally, you're going to want to reopen your doors if you can, and let your businesses know that. Safety of you and your employees is the #1 priority. If multiple events happen concurrently, stay calm and initiate your emergency preparedness plan. You understood your risks, whether that was individually or combined. You planned, and then you prepared. All you have to do now is put it into action. So for more information regarding OFB-EZ, EZ Prep, or Fortified Commercial, you can go to disastersafety.org, scroll directly to the bottom, and you'll see the 3 tabs right over there. Also on our website, you'll be able to find a ton of do-it-yourself resources and guidances, all sorted by risk and property type. And coming later this summer is a new do-it-yourself resource for commercial businesses that are exposed to hurricanes and thunderstorms. This guide will provide you tips and guidance to prepare for your event based off of all different budget levels. They highlight free mitigation tools all the way to big ticket resiliency items. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Gail to wrap things up.
Thanks, Chris. So to conclude our presentation today, I just want to go over these 3 items that you see here on this slide. All businesses are at risk. No one can no longer say it won't happen to me, whether it's hurricanes, severe thunderstorms, winter storms, or even pandemics. All organizations are exposed to some type of severe weather or other type of disruption that in the end will pose a significant risk. And then plans allow businesses to get a jump start on recovery, reopen faster, and reduce your losses. Your business will have a better chance of remaining competitive and minimizing the loss of revenue and customers. And then finally, business continuity must be considered as a constant in everyday business. If your plans don't keep up with your changes, your plans can't and won't be effective when most needed. So Christina, I'll hand it back off to you to see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Gail, and to all of our speakers today. Thank you for sharing that valuable information with all of us. A recording of this webinar will be sent out after the conclusion of today for all of those who are asking that question. We do have a couple questions I want to go ahead and get out to our speakers with the time that we have remaining. We have about 6 minutes to get through a couple of these. Alex, I'll start with you. A question for the SBA. When can I get an SBA disaster loan for mitigation? Is that available before a disaster, or is that something I can only get after a disaster?
Thank you. So currently the mitigation assistance through the SBA Disaster Loan Program is only available following a declared disaster event. But we think that that is like really the most opportune time if you're going through a rebuilding or repairs to your property to take advantage of the disaster loan program because the interest rates are low, because the terms are so affordable, is take advantage of that and borrow the extra money in order to do those protective measures. But right now there is not a pre-disaster mitigation loan program that the SBA provides, which is why the preparedness tips that we talked about today are so important.
Thank you so much, Alex. Gail, a question for you now. As a small business owner who may not have time to create the business continuity plan themselves, who else in my business could I look to giving this responsibility to?
As a business owner, you'll want to look at maybe someone who's been with your organization for quite a while, someone like a subject matter expert. Maybe they've held various positions within your business. Those tend to be the best selection to create or be in charge of creating your business continuity plan. So I would look to those types of people first.
Great, thank you, Gail. Loretta, I think this next question is best suited for III to answer. How will the amount of business income loss be determined for a business?
Oh, thanks, Christina. Yeah. Under most policies, business income coverage includes both the net income, that's the profit a business earns after expenses and allowable deductions, and then the cost of continuing normal operations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Loretta.
Thank you.
And Chris, you mentioned the Fortified Commercial program. If I'm interested in making my facility stronger, where can I go for some more information on that program?
Oh, this is a great question. You can actually go to fortifiedcommercial.com, and right there they'll have all the information about the program, including the standards, how to go about applying for Fortified Commercial, and basically it'll outline everything that you need right in one little spot.
Great, that's great information. Thank you, Chris. Alex, a question for you on the SBA side of things. How do you calculate the economic injury for a small business?
So the way we do the economic injury, when you apply for an SBA disaster loan, you don't request a certain dollar amount. What you do is you provide the financial information for the business. So looking at the total revenue, total operating expenses, cost of goods sold, or if it's for example a rental property, what are the lost rents? And generally what we do is we look at what the monthly working capital needs are, and we'll make an initial loan offering. For example, we might offer up to 6 months of working capital based on those financials that you provided in the application. And that would be the initial loan amount. And then later, if you find that you still have working capital needs and you're still going through the recovery period, you can request an increase. And then we would look at doing that and go back and review the financials again, maybe in a little bit more detail. Great question, though. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that answer, Alex. And Loretta, I believe this is a question that came in during your portion of the presentation. You covered a lot of endorsements and add-ons to insurance. Is there an insurance out there that covers a business interruption due to communicable diseases?
Great question. There are very few that are out there. Most policies are very specific language that excludes communicable diseases, pandemics, viruses, bacteria. Those are all excluded from just about every policy. There was a pandemic policy that was made available about 2 years ago. I think they came out with this new product, and nobody bought it. So, I think it brings back to the point we were making earlier that Gail was making earlier, that we have to think about everything, every kind of risk that's potentially out there, and consequently, I believe this company is now starting to get some interest in that kind of coverage. So we really have to think about the risks there are, and some of the more standard ones are fire and hurricanes, but even then, a lot of people don't buy the right coverages. For example, with flood insurance, after Hurricane Katrina, there were hardly anybody bought the coverage. Once the floods came, people purchased the coverage. We saw an uptick in purchasing, and then 6 months later, you start seeing it slowly, people doing less and less, and finally, like 2 years later, it was back to the same amount. And it's frustrating on our end, and I know with an NFIP and trying to explain to people, this is one of your most important assets. You've worked so hard on it, and yet you're not looking at those risks, what those risks are, and how you can help mitigate against it. So, we encourage people to look at their policies. If they feel that there's not, if they have a risk and that policy doesn't cover that risk, they need to talk to their insurance professional about what they need to do to get the right coverage.
Great. Thank you so much, Loretta. And with that, we are out of time. We thank you all for joining us today. We hope you learned some new information about business continuity and business preparedness during natural disasters and severe weather that you can put into action in your own business. Again, a recording of this webinar will be shared with all those who registered for the event. We hope you stay safe and have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.